Okay, so in the last video we looked at relations and functions, and specifically we talked about how two sets of information were related together. And within each set, remember that we have these things, these little parts of each set are called elements. Okay, so within each set we have elements, and relations and functions talked about or discussed how two sets of elements were related together, or how they are associated together. Today we take that a little step further, and instead of calling those things sets, we call them what we are eventually going to refer to as the domain and range. By definition, the domain is the first set of elements in a relation, and the range is the second set of elements in a relation. So if we looked back one step here, back to here, we're looking at the driving time from Horseshoe Bay to a number of different locations, or Vancouver to a number of different locations. These values on the left hand side over here, we would consider our domain values, because they're the first set of information. And the ones on the right hand side we would have considered, or we do consider, to be our range values, because they are the second set of information. So remember that, as well as we're going to talk and look at something that's called a function. A function is a special type of relation where each element in the domain, so each domain value, is associated with exactly one range or one element in the range. Okay, that this idea of a function is really important. Okay, when we take this to actually graphing using x's and y's and using our coordinate axes, okay, we'll talk about how we can very quickly identify a function or not a function. But for now, we just have to remember that, okay, one domain value can only give rise to one range value. Okay. So what are we going to look at? It says, for each relation below, identify the domain and range and decide whether the relation is a function. So in question A, it says a relation that associates the five foods to the food groups to which they belong. And we have orange is a fruit, cheese is dairy, broccoli is vegetable, milk is dairy, kiwi is fruit. So remember from when we did our ordered pairs from before, the first value in each of these ordered pairs is our domain value. Okay? So these things, the fruit is our domain. Okay? And if we wanted to make note specifically of what the domain is, I would say our domain is, so D, this is a D, not a 0. Let me fix that. Domain is, and what are our domain values? Orange, cheese, broccoli, oops, spelled broccoli wrong, milk, and kiwi. Now, as I write this out, I've also noticed one other thing, is that when we do list out domain and range, we have to take note and make sure that we remember that one thing that we talked about way back here somewhere, in that when we list these things out, they have to be in alphabetical and or numerical order. So really, this listing of our domain and range values as cheese, broccoli, milk, and kiwi, orange, cheese, broccoli, milk, and kiwi, is actually incorrect. It actually should be our domain is, that's supposed to be a bracket. That's a nasty looking bracket. There we go. Alphabetical order would be broccoli, cheese, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, kiwi, milk, and orange. Okay. So alphabetical order for the listing of domains and range. And then, our closing bracket there. So there's our domain. So this listing, our first one, is actually incorrect. And I would erase it, but I know it might be a bit of a problem for you if you're doing it in pen, but you should be doing it in pencil anyway. So there's our domain values. Now we list out our range values. Our range are, I'll do that in a different color. Let's go with purple. Range are the second set in our ordered pair sets. And you can see we have fruit, dairy, vegetable, dairy, fruit. So we only have 3, fruit, dairy, and vegetable, and we list those out again also in alphabetical order. R for range, fancy bracket to show this is the set of our range values. And then what did we say we had? We have fruit, dairy, vegetable, so it's going to go dairy, fruit, vegetable, dairy, fruit, fruit. I was spelling vegetable before you can finish fruit. Fruit, vegetable, and bracket. So there's our domain and range for both of those, for that set of ordered pairs. So that's the first part. Decide or identify the domain and range. Done. Decide whether the relation is a function. So does each of those x values give us only one, not, I said x, I meant domain values. Does each one of these give us only one range value? Blue. Broccoli only gives us vegetable. Cheese only gives us dairy. Kiwi only gives us fruit. Milk only gives us dairy. Orange only gives us fruit. So each of those only gives us one possible value. So this is what we call a function. Okay. Now sometimes when you're looking at lists of words like this and we don't have a graph to look at, it's easier to look at a quick little arrow diagram. So if I just quickly drew an arrow diagram for this, I would have broccoli, I would have cheese, whoa, broccoli I spelled wrong, 2 C's, broccoli, cheese, kiwi, milk, orange. And over here I would have dairy, fruit, vegetable. And then I would draw my arrows. And if we look at how the arrows perform, broccoli goes to vegetable, cheese goes to dairy, kiwi goes to fruit, milk goes to dairy, orange goes to fruit. So each one of these elements in this set only gives rise to one element in this set. Now when we do our next example, you're going to have a quick look to see how that's different with a non-function, but this is what allows us to very quickly see whether this relation is a function or not. So this one is a function. Example B, 5, 6, 9, 11 is the number of players on a team for baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, volleyball. Now the good thing is both our arrow diagrams are already set up for us. Nice alphabetical order or numerical order, and we just have to fill in the arrows. So we quickly say, okay, well, on a baseball team, how many players are on the field? There are 9 players on a field in baseball team. On a basketball team, how many players on the court? 5. On a hockey team, how many players on the ice? 6. Soccer team, how many players on the field? 11. And volleyball team, how many players? 6. So there's our arrow diagram. The first set of things, this set of things, is our domain value. These are our domain values. So I would go domain, colon, fancy big bracket, I think that's supposed to be. And I would go 5, 6, 9, 11, and bracket. There's my domain. My range would be baseball, basketball, of course separated by commas, hockey, soccer, volleyball, and bracket, commas. There. Those are my range values. This second set of elements. Now, that's question A. Question B says, well, is this relation a function? And I look at my domain values and see what they give rise to for my range values. Now, this one, number 6, can be a hockey team, and it can also be a volleyball team. So now I have one domain value giving 2 possible range values. This makes this not a function. It's okay to have 2 going the other way. Up here, we had 2 dairies. We had 2 dairies, okay? But that's going from range to domain. When going from domain to range, if you have 2 different values, it's not a function. So remembering that, carrying on to the next couple of examples, I will pick these up in the next ones.